So sometime we have time to kill, whenever that is. When you're trying to put out something else.
Yeah. When you're trying to distract yourself from something you should be focusing on. Okay, are we ready to get started?
We are ready to rock and roll. Live streaming.
Okay, so my name is McKay Daines.
And I'm Ben Schulteis.
And the name of our project or our group is Light Hat Security. So at the beginning of last semester, we were initially paired up with another capstone group. And their focus was making educational videos for like hacking tutorials, essentially. But as time went on, Ben and I realized that we were more passionate about teaching basic cybersecurity principles to people without a background in information security. The vast majority of internet users are people without a formal background in computer security or any kind of experience, and mostly rely on Windows Defender, trial programs, and urban legends for their cybersecurity. And we felt like this isn't how it should be. And so the main goal of our project is to make cybersecurity principles simple, free, and accessible to everyone. So to accomplish this goal, we looked at a number of educational platforms and programs that are highly successful, like Khan Academy, Coursera. Stanford University also offers a lot of really great cybersecurity tutorials. And based on this information, and based on the way that they did things, we decided that videos would be the best way for us to convey our information. We've all seen videos where there's like the HyperCam trial program in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and it's got some weird music playing in the background, and somebody's like typing in a note on the screen to explain what's going to happen. While this is definitely like effective and sometimes necessary for like those much more technical videos, we felt like making kind of more conversational, personal videos would accomplish our goals better. And the biggest priority for our project was the content in our videos. We weren't seeking to establish a brand or monetize something in any way. We just want to make the content as good as possible and get it out there and available to everyone. And so to that extent, we posted our videos on YouTube and also a website that we created.
As McKay said, our content was really our focus for our project, and so we thought really hard about different topics that would be really useful to people. We talked with friends and family members, and the main topic that we thought everyone's going to want to know is passwords. If you ask an average person what cybersecurity is, they probably think of passwords, maybe only of passwords. Everyone's familiar with them. So that was our flagship video, you could say. And it started off as just one video, and as we were writing it, you can see it's split up into three. For the rest, we tried to keep them a single video, 3 to 5 minutes at the most, so someone can just come in, watch the video. They don't need to have watched other videos. They can just jump right in. But again, for passwords, it ended up being 3. And we also made an encryption and a hashing video to help it kind of explain those. Those are really complicated terms for people that are unfamiliar with technical jargon. We think we did a decent job giving them the basics so they can maybe understand what's going on behind the scenes when we talk about those concepts. And then some of the others, we also talk about password managers. We give them an idea of what their capabilities are and let them know if maybe password managers are something they want to use. We talk about what they can do when there's a data breach. We talk about a few scams that they should be aware of and cautious of, including social engineering, phishing, vishing, ransomware, and scareware, and particularly what not to do when they encounter those, and then a few other topics.
Again, the overarching goal for all these video topics is to make videos that are applicable to the everyday internet user, and we feel like we did a pretty good job of that. So now we want to talk about the process we went through in making these videos. Obviously, the first step was research and scripting our videos. As information systems students, Ben and I were at least familiar with most of the concepts, but familiarity doesn't mean you can just write a 7-minute video off the top of your head. And it took a surprising amount of work doing the research to prepare this material. I'm sure that's something as professors you're more than familiar with. It takes a lot of work to put out what seems like a little bit of content. But again, as we were targeting these videos towards a common audience, we felt it was really important that we understand this content and understand it well enough to where we could teach it simply. And not only is this important for education in general, but for our project in particular. We wanted our scripts to be more conversational than just kind of academic or informative. We wanted people to stay engaged, and this proved to be a little more difficult than we anticipated.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the audio recording that we did. We used Audacity as our software. Neither McKay or I had ever used the software before, so at the start it took us a little bit to get used to it, figure out how to operate it. It's not the most beautiful looking software, but it works really well for what we had to do. We also acquired a better microphone than the ones that our laptops come with. That was probably a good idea. As far as location for recording, we recorded it just in our apartments. Tried to do it at times where there was less traffic on the streets nearby. It worked out for us. We thought about trying to schedule a sound booth, which would have given us even better sound quality, but we were happy with what we had, and we didn't want to deal with having to schedule every time we wanted to make some audio recordings. As far as the process of actually recording, we familiarized ourselves with our script, made sure we were comfortable with what we were saying, and also comfortable with the tone we wanted to present. McKay was really good about helping coach so the sound wasn't as, monotone, which I had a tendency to do at the start. So McKay helped me a lot with that. We'd read through the script. We try and do it in one take, but that never worked out. And we found that it was particularly difficult to insert new recordings if we decided we need to re-record a bit and then insert it in. It was really hard to get the tone right. You could tell that it just was a different piece kind of spliced together. So that was probably the most challenging part about recording.
And then for the videos themselves, we decided to use Video Scribe. We talked with Dr. Maservi early on this semester, and he gave us a couple of recommendations for software that we could use. And we ended up choosing them for a couple of reasons, primarily because we felt like their animation style and kind of the end product of the videos best matched what we were hoping to accomplish. It was also pretty intuitive, and had a number of pre-rendered animations and objects that we could use in our videos. So we decided to go with them, and then we would import the audio files to play in the background, and then would time the animations and the transitions to match our audio track. And that was probably the most time-intensive step of the whole process, is just matching the animations and the different frames to the audio. And then we would export the videos to YouTube and then also post them on our website. So we wanted to briefly show you some of the content that we created. This video is our password tips video. We may not make it through the whole thing depending on how much time we have. We wanted to show you, kind of the end result of this research and recording work.
Welcome to Light Hat Security. In this video, we're going to give you our top 8 password tips. While we encourage you to implement as many of these as possible, we understand that you won't be able to apply them all to every account you have. Instead, start with the most important ones, such as your bank and email accounts, and make them more secure first. Now, let's get started. Tip number 1, don't use the same password for all your accounts. 2 recent data breaches revealed that 31% of victims reused passwords across multiple accounts. Don't do this. If one of your accounts is breached or a password is hacked, having different passwords can prevent you from losing everything or being vulnerable across accounts. Consider using a password manager for all of your passwords. A password manager is software that will store passwords and other account info behind multiple layers of strong encryption. They can help to generate secure passwords based on specific requirements, such as password length and the presence of special characters, and can even enter user credentials automatically. This way, you'll only need to remember one password, the one for your password manager, while it stores very secure and difficult to remember passwords for each site or app you have. A few password managers are 1Password, LastPass, and Dashlane. Just make sure that the password for your password manager is exceptionally strong. Tip number 2, avoid using even parts of the same passwords across accounts. A common technique people use is to keep parts of their password the same and cycle out different prefixes, suffixes, or something similar. Here's an example. Let's say the password for my email account is email password, and I make a different password for my bank account, bank password, maybe even replacing some of the letters for numbers instead. This may seem like a clever way to have different passwords across accounts that are easy to remember, but unfortunately, even basic password hacking software can take a known password and automatically try countless variations of it, making this a very unsafe practice. Again, a password manager can help you create unique passwords for each account, and will remember them so you don't have to. Tip number 3, don't make short passwords. Because of math, long passwords are best. As the length of your password increases, the number of possible password variations and the length of time a brute force attack would take both increase exponentially. A computer might be able to guess a 7-character password in about 10 minutes, but that same computer could take over 200 million years to crack a 14-character password. As often as you can, make your passwords long. Tip number 4, don't print out your passwords, write them down, or use them in suspicious-looking sites. Leaving your password somewhere it is easily accessible, for example, a sticky note on your desk, is a great way to compromise your security. Also, avoid giving information to sites that seem suspicious, or make offers that seem too good to be true. They might steal your password and try to use it on other sites. In another video, we will teach you ways to identify when people are trying to steal your information. Tip number 5, use two-factor authentication whenever possible. Two-factor authentication is when an additional method of authentication is used to verify access. For example, when logging into your email account on a new computer, you might need to enter your password and then the 6-digit code sent to your cell phone. This extra layer of security can prevent someone from accessing your accounts if they manage to get your password. While two-factor authentication is a good way to make your accounts more secure, it isn't always available, but look for it as an option in your most important accounts, such as your bank account and email. Tip number 6, avoid using passwords over public Wi-Fi connections or on unsecured computers. While using either of these does not guarantee a breach of your information, they can put you at increased risk. Hackers might intercept your passwords and other data over unsecured Wi-Fi networks. Alternatively, they could install a keylogger on an unsecured computer to obtain your passwords. A keylogger is a small piece of hardware that logs every keystroke on a computer. Tip number 7, make sure no one watches when you enter your password. The technical term for this is shoulder surfing, though you and I would probably just call it peeking. It's why some people cover their hand when entering a PIN number at the ATM. Also be careful not to enter your password into the username box, as it will be visible to anyone watching. Our 8th and final tip, don't leave devices logged on. Besides giving someone access to your device, it can take someone only moments to change the password and effectively hold your device ransom. Most devices have controls to prevent this, but you still give them access to your systems if you leave your device logged on.
All right, we'll stop it there for the sake of time.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Like I need to show that to my dad and some of my neighbors.
That's exactly what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
All right, so last we just like to go over a few key lessons that we learned over the course of the semester while working on this project that we think will help obviously in future workplaces and also just in our daily lives. And the first of those is to anticipate our plans changing. not necessarily to expect it to happen. Plans are good, but they can change, and we were surprised by a few of those changes. Particularly the way we thought the work would go at the start. We thought we were going to work on everything simultaneously together at the same time, which is now I see is insane. So we thought we'd work on the research while animating, while thinking of what pictures we wanted in the animations and recording it. We thought we'd do that all at the same time, and obviously that didn't really work out for us. We also learned each other's strengths and weaknesses, and we found out what worked for us better. McKay he was a lot better at research, so we focused more on that, and I did more of the audio. That was in part because I had the microphone, but it just worked out that way, and it worked out better for us. Also at the start, we wanted to minimize costs by only paying for one subscription to our animation software, VideoScribe, and we figured out pretty quickly that wasn't going to work very well, because we had to be together if we were going to work on it together. So we just decided to get two, and that worked out a lot.
Another thing we learned is that it's not easy to make high quality content. We kind of touched on this earlier, but it took a surprising amount of time to do the research required to, concisely write what we wanted to say. It took time to record the audio and edit that, and most of all, it took time to match up those animations to the audio track itself. VideoScribe is great, but it didn't give us any way to modify the audio track at all. So we had to have the audio track perfect, like the pacing just how we wanted it. Then we would import it into VideoScribe and then manually line up the animations to the sound itself. And so that, as it sounds, took a lot of time. But I think it was worth it. We also learned how to kind of establish a consistent art style and writing style with two creators. Both Ben and I were both invested in this project and did a lot of the work for all the steps. And as time went on, we got better at kind of understanding each other and coming to a consensus on what our animation style was, what kind of image we wanted to present, and what kind of content we wanted to present as well.
The last lesson we learned how to work better together. We've both kind of mentioned this already, but I want to highlight the last point. When it came to decision making, at the start of our project, we didn't really want to step on each other's toes. We're a lot more careful with our words. Not that we're rude to each other now, but we're more open now, and so it's allowed us to make important decisions a lot quicker than we were at the start, and it's helped the work to go faster.
Yeah, definitely. And Ben now knows that I don't really care if he says that I think that's a bad idea. I don't get my feelings hurt that much. I'd rather know it than have to spend 20 minutes going back and forth about it. Okay, any questions?
Well, let's clap for you first. So tell me a little bit about, you've produced a handful of these now. How many videos in total did you produce?
I think it's 16.
Yeah,
Okay,
16.
yeah, that's a really good amount. How long per minute of finished video did it take for you to produce that? So one minute in the final took how many minutes, hours, weeks?
I would say like a minute of content was probably around between 2 and 3 hours of work.
That's pretty good.
Most of that being the animation timing.
Got it.
Yeah, and definitely at the start, it was a lot worse. Probably more like 5 hours for a minute of content, but we definitely got better at it.
Our first video took us like a week and a half.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I really, having done a lot of this myself, that timing's pretty good.
Thank you.
My online content often is in the range of 15 to 20 hours per hour of final content, but that's a lot of screen recording, not having to animate everything. You think it should be less, but it just
It always turns out to be
takes so long, 20 to 30 times sometimes.
Have you had a chance to show this to some normal people, and what was their reaction to it?
Because we thought it was beautiful,
Absolutely.
but we're not normal.
We've showed it to a few classmates. They've given us good feedback, positive feedback. My mom is a middle school technology teacher.
Nice.
So I showed her. She loves it. She's given She gave us some ideas for videos. She asked if she could share it in class.
Like perfect target audience for us.
Mhm.
So yeah, like very positive response.
Great. Well, that's gonna be one of my questions. How are you gonna get the word out that this exists now? Starting with Ben's mom, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we've considered just kind of reaching out to individuals who, would find this useful. Like people in charge of security for small companies, educators. We've also considered reaching out to some of those kind of educational channels we mentioned, like Khan Academy, and just saying, hey, this is here if you want it. I'm not sure if they would be interested in a partnership with us, but that's a possibility we're considering. Or maybe just like, hey, could you give us a shout out? Yeah.
I would write at least, I don't know what you're trying to do pricing wise, but if you're trying to make it like free, then Khan Academy would definitely be there, but also like free code camp or like Medium posts about it would probably help.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, and I'm wondering about just, I don't know if we can get the Universe to cover it or Daily Herald or something. Get the word out to, the Orem Senior Center or something, where it just kind of spreads to the general public through a little bit of publicity.
Sounds great. Yeah, Andrew.
So how did you decide to go with animations? Because they were awesome. And like one of the YouTube channel I watched, they focus heavily on animation. So what led to your decision with that?
I think for us partially it was kind of what you said. You said there's a YouTube channel that you follow that does those videos. I mean, we've all at least seen one or two videos like this before, and I think even in Dr. Vance's class we watched one.
I think so.
And I've found these kind of videos entertaining and also interesting in that I think like having an audio to listen to that differs from what you see gives you opportunities to learn more, and kind of learn in different ways. It's kind of like, how you don't want to have your PowerPoint list everything you say. You want to have your PowerPoint show different things. I think that difference, encourages learning and encourages like forming memories, I guess. So we thought it was interesting and visually appealing, and also successful channels use that as well. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I think the alternative is probably a screen capture, but since our content was more simple, we felt that a screen capture was more for advanced topics, more academic level, but for simple topics that you can learn quickly, we felt that animations would help a lot better.
I mean, we didn't really have any screen to capture,
Right.
For doing a screen capture, we'd like pull the Wikipedia page and be like, here you go. And we
Let's
wanted
read
to
it together.
Yeah, we wanted to do more than that. We didn't think that would be very interesting. Yeah.
The images you used, sometimes it was, right from the beginning, it was fun to watch something get filled out, draws an envelope and then fills in the color on the envelope. Was all of that, a couple questions related to that. Did you use only things that came with the software to do all of that, or did you use any imagery that came from outside of there?
I would say probably about 80% of the imagery we used was from VideoScribe.
I would think even more.
Between 80-90%. And then there were some images that we would just source off of Google, and we'd make sure to make them so like there weren't any kind of royalty requirements, so they were free to use. And we use those for like a background image, or like for some of our videos we reference historical events, and so we'd take like a picture and fill that in.
Oh, awesome. Well, it looked like you could customize some of the things too, like the hand's writing, and you can put the words that the hand's going to write. So.
Yeah, like the speed that the hand writes at, and then it draws at. That's what we had to change to match the timing. That and like the pauses between each image and how long it would stay on a screen. VideoScribe it was pretty intuitive in how you could change that, but you had to be pretty exact as well. So you had to go over and like each 15-second segment, you'd have to kind of review a number of times to make sure that the timing was right and that it lined up.
Do you have these videos memorized, Ben?
Almost for some of
The
them.
animations of them, yeah. That's for some of them.
Word for word.
All right, other questions? All right, good job, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, I think AWS course is next. You have 4 minutes or so to set up.
And did word get out about the new location?
It hasn't been sent out, but it will be sent out.
Okay. Jeff has our backup for the backup. We need the backup.
I have a church.
Backing
and a
up,
park
backing up.
and a pavilion reserved.
But we also have the new part of the conference center.
I know,
The
so
new
cool.
part even.
I told these guys I'm
Ashland works
so
some magic.
disappointed to be missing this one.
Wow.
And I finally signed up.
Good.
They signed up me and all my kids. Is that a problem?
How many kids
I saw
did
that.
you
I'm glad they're
have?
coming.
Well, the youngest one isn't eating barbecue yet.
Oh, good. You're all invited. How many kids do you have?
I have 5 kids.
That's awesome.
Under 7.
He says as he pulls his face down.
Busy, busy, busy. We'll just get busier.
Do you have 5, Tom?
I have 5. Yeah.
How did
We kind of chose the spread out strategy. So I have a, let's see, 12-year gap, 13-year gap. So I'm staying up late, getting up early. It's awesome.
Definitely pros and cons of both approaches.
Oh yeah, yeah. I go back and forth.
Sometimes I think it would be nice to have a babysitter in the house. There's some sanity.
Man, when that happened, when my kids reached that age, I was just like, this is the
Magical.
most amazing thing ever.
You know,
Ever.
18 years from now, we're empty nesters.
I would worry that like the shock of the change would just be too much for me.
It probably would be.
I'm just like
Yeah.
a little bit at a time.
We're going to every conference together after that.
That's right. Rightly so.
Oh, I've only got 8 more years for that, all right? 12 more
8
years,
more years,
or 18. So is this help designed for your class as well?
Yep. This is the AWS course, and I'll let these gentlemen explain all the amazing work. I've been privileged to see the preview of the content, but basically building out a lot of the labs that I'll use for the course. So
We should
major.
put his honorary name
Oh.
here.
No, this is all you.
Nick Ward mentioned, by the way, in one of our meetings, he's like, "You're doing the service job for him? Do you guys get paid?" We're like, "No." And he's like, "What are you doing?"
That's exactly.
Nick, I heard that.
So that's the subtle hint.
Yes. Oh, how much do you need?
And now we have to buy bootstraps because we can just say we own it.
That's right.
Okay, are we ready to start?
Yep. We're 1 minute early, but we can go ahead and start.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We'll start just a little bit early, and we're actually going to start right off with a demo. Because we're going to show you how to create a greeter skill on Amazon Alexa. So coming in, you come into the developer.amazon.com portal. Thanks, that's the wrong one.
Part of our demo.
Yeah, this will be one of the demos that we do throughout the presentation. So we're going to go ahead here, and we're going to create a skill. We're going to call it a greeter. And you know, one of the things that I was amazed by with this, and we'll talk about this a little later on, is some of their services are very managed. So this is one where you write very, very little code. So we're going to select a custom skill, but most of the work is going to be done by Amazon under the hood here. So with this, it's got just a few different things we need to add here to get it going. We're going to add a custom intent. An intent is a function that you want it to perform. So we're going to call this a welcome function.
It timed out here. I don't know if it's switched over.
It's there.
Now it's back.
Okay. Okay, and so now we're going to give it some examples, some example utterances, or what someone might say to invoke this skill. And so we're going to say something like,
What's going on?
Get us started. Could be one thing that they would say. And then this, we just need to save and build this.
Save,
Save, build.
Build, okay. I do have another working copy of this in case this doesn't work, because live demos almost never work.
It's kind of the way it goes with teaching class too.
Yep. Remember, one of the things that we need to do before we can save and build is we need to create our Lambda function. So an Alexa skill hits a Lambda function that then provides the processing power. And so we're going to come over here to the Lambda console. We're going to create, we're going to look for a blueprint, and it's got Alexa in the name, so we'll just filter them and we'll get this fact skill. It's in Node.js, which I was a little intimidated by at first because I don't know Node at all. But when I looked at it, you really don't need to know Node. You just plug in a few parameters here and it just works. So we'll go ahead and create this function. And then here we just need to tell it what triggers we want. So we're going to add the Alexa skill kit, and then we'll give it the skill ID that we copied from the Alexa skill that we created a second ago. Just paste that right in there and add it. And then what we need to do is configure the code for our greeter. So this is where I was a little intimidated. I don't know Node, but if you look here, it just asks for a skill name. So this example was space facts. It gave facts about space, so it'd be great for like an 8-year-old or something. I already have some of this code. Instead of letting you watch me type it out, we're going to copy and paste it. We're just going to change the name, change the facts that it gives out, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, and we'll save this. And it's got right here, you can test it with some pre-built test cases that they have there, but for the time being, we're going to go without testing, and we're going to fly by the seat of our pants here. But then I need to grab this ARN from the Lambda function and tie that into our Alexa skill. And then after that, we should be pretty much good to go. So we're going to save endpoints, come back here, save our model. Nope.
Invocation.
Oh, yeah, I forgot this. So invocation name, you have to give it the name that you want to call it. So we're going to call it greeter. And then we'll build that. And that'll take just a little bit to build. And then after that, we'll be able to use our dot device here to make that work. And one of the things that we learned while doing this was how much documentation Amazon gives you and how it's really good to work with what's provided for these labs. We ended up using a lot of pre-built labs and pre-built content from Amazon in order to facilitate this, because we knew that Amazon would be keeping up a lot of their documentation on this. And so that was one of the lessons learned that we had. Okay, so it looks like that finished building. We'll go ahead and come in here just to enable testing on it.
So does your dot, because it's associated with your account, automatically have access to those skills without
Yes, it does.
having to enable them?
Yeah. And so then I could test it right here on the computer, but since I have a device, we'll test it with the one that I just created, and if that doesn't work, we'll go back to the other one. So Alexa, open greeter skill.
Hello, now we have Jason, Drake, and Stephen in their project is an AWS class for the BYU Information Systems Department.
Sweet.
Voila!
Yeah.
I feel like the greatest showman. That was like our introduction.
Turn that off.
Okay. Where's that?
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is our background services. So what we did to get started with our project, and kind of the process that we did getting started, and then we'll talk about the services that we ended up using, and how we organize those into labs, and then the kind of the schedule that we are suggesting based on some dependencies that the labs have. Then we'll go through a few demos, and then we'll talk about our lessons learned, and finally have questions after that.
Yeah, so first for the background, we really wanted to make sure that we were creating something that would be useful to students, because obviously we recognize that students wanted to learn about AWS, but the real question was why, and how do we do that in an effective way. So we reached out to two main sources. in the terms of data collection, and we first reached out to Island for alums who have been using AWS in the workplace, and we asked them a couple of questions, and then we also asked students a couple of questions and tried to tailor our approach towards those. So first we'll go into the Island. We asked them what were the top 5 services that you used, and it looks pretty similar to what you would think. EC2, which is basically the VMs, right? S3, which is storage. Lambda, which is what we saw earlier, is just serverless functions. And then RDS, which is your database, which is completely managed by AWS in some regards. And then IAM, which is access management. So this is pretty much just validated what we assumed would be the highest level of services. And then next, moving on, we actually wanted to turn to the students and kind of ask them some questions as well. And one of the questions we asked them was, would you be interested in getting AWS certified? So 60% said yes, and around 40% said maybe. There was a no option, but nobody said no, probably because they didn't want to say or hurt our feelings in any way. But we did see that they thought that there would be some value to that, and so we certainly catered towards that. We also asked them what areas would you be interested in, and as you can see, there's really interested across the board. About 10 people are really interested in everything, and then various levels. But the main takeaway that we got here was that each individual area would provide some benefit to our students, and so we really tried to cater across a wide variety of topics and did a wide variety of things.
And so with that, we decided to use a lot of different services. We actually ended up using over 30 different services in the different labs that we have. We don't go very deep into all of them, obviously. That would take 30 classes probably, but we gave the students an idea of how to use a lot of different services. So that we can, get their feet wet and, get them comfortable with the console and with the services.
Yeah, so now we're going to go over each one of our labs that we created in the order that we suggest that they're presented to the students. And each one of us validated everyone else's lab. So usually one student would be behind the lab, and then the other 2 would validate to make sure that we weren't speaking in some foreign language. So the first one is identity and access management. Basically, this is just user management within AWS. It's kind of the core skill. Just got their feet wet in terms of what permissions you need to do different things with different services, and gave a good foundation.
Yeah, after that, we gave them some of the core fundamental services, S3, Route 53, so they could create a static website that was scalable and was distributed globally. It was secure using certificates. It was also had a domain. So it was similar to what's done in the IS-201 class, but now using the cloud and creating all that infrastructure themselves.
Yeah, next we took the students through the process of actually launching an Apache web server that had Django already pre-installed, and then created an AMI out of that so that they would be able to spin up multiple instances. Basically, an AMI is just a saved image of the virtual machine that you could be then used in various configurations with load balancers and things like that, and provided them the opportunity to scale with their applications.
For instance, students in the core could use an AMI and save themselves lots of headaches for in-text
if
too.
they had our AMI, it would save them so much time.
Which you can make public, and we could potentially sell to students.
That's your side business right there, your hustle.
You're not going to pay them, right? They got to make money.
Yeah.
Granted.
As long as you put students into here and say you have to use this AMI. And then the developer tools is actually just a CI/CD pipeline, and just really got into the DevOps functions within AWS and used the AMI before and kind of built on it there, so you could push changes to GitHub and it would reflect in your website on your AMI as well.
Then we moved into NoSQL, going previously from the traditional RDBMS, and then kind of pushing into a lot more of kind of the NoSQL way, and so we teach them a little bit about NoSQL and get their feet wet with that, which we then use as a launch pad into serverless. And so we do a whole lab on serverless, and spinning up a full website using Dynamo, and then with functions and APIs that they'll hit instead of using the traditional architecture that they've probably used.
Then we take that same paradigm of, and then we show them how to quickly partition infrastructure as code, and we spin up an entire GitHub Enterprise server that then they can, if they wanted to, put their own code on, put other students' code on, just show them how easy it can be to spin up all the services and infrastructure needed for an application.
Then we move into SMS and SQS, which is just notifications and then queuing. And so we essentially will create a Woof app, if you're familiar with the Office, where you can quickly send like a text, email, phone call. I mean, like tons of stuff, all just the same person at one time. Just kind of a fun way to kind of be introduced to simple notifications and queuing through the cloud perspective paradigm.
And then we kind of branched out in a way and went into the IoT services that AWS has and just really basic functionality with their IoT buttons so that you can connect a button and trigger Lambda functions in the cloud and affect cloud resources as well.
Then we show the students how to take a simple text file, analyze that, turn it into a table, and then get visualizations off that. So an end-to-end ETL and visualization lab.
And then kind of like what Jason showed, but a little bit different. It's just a chat bot on the phone or on a screen or a website. Basically, and we'll actually demo this later as well, but a way to create a conversational interface using the Lex engine that AWS provides.
Then the assistant skills, like I demoed at the very beginning, teaching students how to make an Alexa skill, and then also because I got a little bit of experience using the Google Cloud Platform, saw how easy that is. This one has actually a side-by-side comparison of how to create an Alexa skill and a Google Assistant action.
Then we finish up with Mobile Hub and show them how to not just create an app, but how to create that app with a full cloud backend that's completely user-driven, so that if they logged on to an app on a different device, all their data would still be saved. And we are incredibly excited about the content that we've created. I really think that students who take the class will love it, and it's great content. We're excited, and hopefully they really enjoy it and get a lot out of it.
Does your core services include kind of EC2, high-level overview, and other services?
That mainly is covered in the AMI lab.
Okay. Yeah.
But
some of those are.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
And we should mention we went with the paradigm or with the perspective of them having taken 531.
Yeah.
So they'll come into this class with quite a bit of experience already. So we don't cover Elastic Beanstalk or RDS. We cover EC2 a little bit, but the more of the fundamentals that they get in that class, we didn't want to build too much more on.
Yeah.
We wanted to kind of branch out a little bit as well.
Perfect.
So now we will get into 3 demos of kind of the final products that students will create in the actual class.
Okay, we'll just switch over here to our demo machine. So we're going to start off, while that comes up, with the last lab that we talked about there, the Mobile Hub app. And so this is a copy of the app running on my computer. It's a note-taking app. So you start off with a very simple note-taking app where everything is saved locally. And then we take and one by one we move all of the functionalities, or a lot of the functionality, to the cloud. And so we store all of the notes in a table. We add analytics, and we add Cognito login, so that then they can log in on other devices, log out, log back in, and have all of their notes saved. So I'm just going to show real quick how you're able to see some of the analytics from that. So we have an event on there for adding or deleting a note. And so anytime a note is added or deleted, like if I wanted to delete my reminder about the IS lab password because I'm not going to be in the lab anymore and I don't really care anymore, I can just delete that note.
Jason, you will always care.
I may always care. But I can also probably ask one of the other students. And then I can also create another note, and all of that gets, I'll just show the dashboard actually. So.
And Pinpoint shows just the basic information. It's like if you were to put an app on the Apple App Store, you get basic analytics. Pinpoint is just that, but it allows you to combine Android, React, any other platform, all to the same backend. And so it gives basic demographics about who's using your app, but you can also add the additional test events, for example, the 2 that Jason's talking about.
Yeah. So this shows the daily active endpoint, so I can see how many users are using it on a daily basis.
Very popular right now.
Yeah, it's extremely popular. I think I've launched it twice. And this shows the one device that I have connected to it, which is an iOS device. We do have we focus on using iOS for the lab, but we do have resources available if students want to do an Android or a React.
Nope, not React.
Not React.
Just Android.
iOS or Android.
Don't do that. That never happened.
And then here is the dashboard that shows the events. This shows the number of endpoints, and then you can come in here and look at the add note event, and that shows specifically how many notes have been added since I first created the app. And I would show you live data, but it takes a little while for it to come in. So we'll see. Hopefully this will come
About
out.
2 to 3 minutes typically.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so students will be able to see it, but for time's sake.
Yeah. So it shows, that I've
Opened it up several times.
created 9 different notes the first time I tried it, and then today I created 4, and I deleted a bunch too. So it's really cool, really awesome to be able to see all of the functionality. That you can create your own events there.
Cool.
So now we'll move on to the Slack bot using Lex, which Steve will describe.
Yeah, so this is much more of an applicable way in terms of enterprises, where maybe you wouldn't have an Alexa skill, but you would definitely have an enterprise Slack account. So here we just created a Slack channel, or a Slack team, I guess is the right terminology, and then integrated a Lex bot here. And in the course, we actually have them create their own and come up with their own conversations to trigger a variety of different services. However, we'll just walk through some of the basic functionality and show you some of the power of what is behind here. So we actually want to order flowers today. So let's say I would like to order flowers. And so then it'll ask me what type of flowers you would like to order. So this is actually just coming right back from the cloud. And let's say I type in something not quite like a flower, and it will actually just keep. Wow, that's interesting. It's not supposed to do that. It's supposed to register what I'm typing. Hang on. There we go. I think it didn't like the 3 words there, but it'll say we don't have this. Would you like a different type of flower? Our most popular flowers are roses. So then we'll go ahead and add roses. And actually what's happening here is that Lambda, a Lambda function is validating the user's input. And we could actually show you how you could talk to it as well using, this is actually be online. So you could talk to your computer or your phone or different things like that if you wanted to integrate it with your mobile apps in order to produce text. And then the Lambda function will actually validate your input versus a database or a JSON object, whichever you have. We'll also validate further use cases. So let's say I want to do it on Monday, and I want to pick them up at 7 p.m. So then it will tell us that we're only open from 10 to 5. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and hit 4 p.m. And it's pretty intuitive, right? You see that it says 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. written out, but it will also respond to something like 4 and the number 4. And then I can actually just hit yes, and then it will trigger, this would potentially trigger a Lambda function that would then order flowers for you. And again, in real life, it might be connected to a CI/CD pipeline. And doing my research, that's kind of what I saw that some organizations were doing. They would have a channel specifically dedicated to, say, build the latest production environment or something like that, and they would tie their Lambda function in with their build process, whether it's Jenkins or code build on AWS, and kind of go from there. So, yeah, that was the Lex Lab.
All right, the third demo that we'll show you guys is the this way. It's the Wild Rides. Musavi's laughing because he's seen this. So it's essentially Uber, and if you want to pick up a unicorn instead of a car. This is actually taught by Amazon in some of their conferences, so we felt like this is a great tutorial into just basic serverless. And so you set this up on with Lambda through API Gateway, and then also Cognito. Cognito will manage all of the users for them. I don't want to register. I just want to sign But I should mention, if you do register, it's really cool because it's all on Amazon with the backend for authentication. It'll actually send a verification email, and so students can learn how to do, a full enterprise level backend, in just a short lab. But we will just sign in. My super secret password. Okay.
Password one?
It is password one. Yes. And then they'll be able to choose a location and then request a unicorn to that location. And then it'll save all that data, the history of those unicorns, in a DynamoDB table. And so it gives just a brief overview of kind of what serverless is, how it works, how the architecture works, and then kind of a fun demo to show those principles.
Yeah, so since we finished our demos, we're going to now move on to our lessons learned. And once this pulls up, we'll go into, we did learn a lot along the way, and this is outside of technical things. We're not going to dive into specifics on services, but in general, what we learned.
Okay, so first couple of lessons that we learned. The cloud doesn't mean that you don't code. There are some services that are fairly managed, but many services still require you to do a lot of coding. And so it doesn't abstract away all of that coding. There are some, like the assistant skill, where you don't need to know as much to do very simple things. It really allows you to do more with a little experience, but it does not eliminate the need to code at all. But with that, we learned that it's really powerful. You can do a lot with very little experience, very little knowledge, and you kind of come into that more and more as you go through each service and learn about each service, how much you can really do with each of the different things that they provide. It really is awesome, the capabilities that the cloud offers.
And to mention, it extends your abilities, meaning the things that you can do just with some like Python libraries are limited compared to kind of the extension that you have when you're using some of these different services. And it's just incredible the things you can do with one person or with a small team incredibly fast and without too much of a problem compared to maybe what you would have used if you had done more of a traditional architecture.
Yeah, and then the next thing that we learned is willingness to experiment is crucial to your learning. Basically, this means that you need to dive in really quick and then maybe figure it out along the way. I think early on we were all trying to completely understand something before we got in and started playing around with it, but we found that as long as we learned kind of the fundamentals, so we weren't going to charge ourselves thousands of dollars, but we really got in and experimented with different things. Even if you did make a big mistake with the cloud, it's so easy to just spin up a new instance or do something like that. And so it really took kind of a, I'm going to try this and move fast and break things, kind of to talk to the what do you call it, the Facebook model, but which maybe isn't most popular at this point. But basically, we learned that you need to just dive in and learn good things.
The last big lesson, specifically with AWS, although I think this could be generalized to almost any new technology, but it's that when you're working with these like bleeding edge technologies, there's growing pains. And we absolutely experienced that. Just over the few months we've been working with this, they've had some of their conferences and they've had updates with a lot of their services, and it's tough because the community doesn't have a lot of know-how yet, and their documentation isn't written out great at that point, and so it's difficult to work with those technologies. So you just have to be patient and willing, I guess, and you can get through them. But and with that, we'll open up for any questions.
Well, let's clap first.
Great job. Super impressed with these demos and lessons. Are they in a lab type format? What's the format the students would be seeing here?
Yeah.
Why
So we,
don't you show them?
Sure. Yeah, show them to everybody.
Definitely a lab format.
So very similar to the other classes the Dr. Maservi teaches. It's a Word document that walks you through the different steps that you'll do. We don't walk through every single tiny little step. We're not hand holding through all of these labs. We give them a little bit of room to wiggle and maneuver and make a few mistakes and learn from it. But we guide them through and give them some basic instructions on what to do.
Okay.
Just the.
I think
all
going
the
forward,
folders.
the biggest challenge for me teaching this class will be constant updating to interfaces and other things. Even for some of the labs I developed for 531, there's times when I developed the lab, released it, I kind of went through it on Friday. Monday came back, they had just released something, and the options were different, and so I think the students will have to be a little bit resilient, but there'll be kind of this constant update to kind of interfaces, and every time we teach the
And
class.
I think that actually works in our favor because that's going to be something that they're facing wherever they go and using AWS.
Yeah, yeah.
As an acquired teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Hey
So we
folks,
actually hope they
students,
change.
this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Learn, deal with it.
Basically means you'll probably have to go through each lab each year and make sure nothing's changed.
Well, yeah, and my experience even with the more stable services, I change, probably, not always, but up to a third of the lab, every year on those stable services. And so like some of these things, I anticipate it's going to be every year redeveloped.
Capstone students every year.
The benefit though is once the template's there, get in, kind of move, re-screenshot things, and I can task a TA to help with that process.
TA, go through this.
Yeah, preparing it for the
entire
semester.
process to make sure it's still valid.
Because then
Yeah.
they get paid.
Then they get paid.
and we tried to pick.
I will
topics.
hire any of you anytime.
Counting on it.
We tried to pick topics too that are, I don't know. There's a lot of people looking for those topics. Meaning, if our tutorials become outdated, the topic itself is fairly relevant, and so there's other tutorials out there. So you'd be able to spin up's the wrong word. You'd be able to create a new template or a new lab. I would assume very quickly.
And you'd shared with me that a lot of the content for the labs come from existing open tutorials out there, so it's not like you have a unique corner on kind of the content per se, but kind of validated logical flow in a format that students will probably be familiar with. Do you have any?
So in the beginning, you said that there were students, gave them a little survey and said, what do you want to know about AWS? That sort of thing. You had done any post surveys and asked the students?
I have not.
Well, they haven't seen any of this.
Yeah, they haven't done anything with it yet.
Okay, but you built it all in the lab context, so I was just wondering.
Yeah, so we certainly validate it with each other, and it'll be offered in the fall. So we'll get most of the feedback then, I feel like, and then that would be where Maservi would need to change things.
And we, like you said, we did go through and we looked at each other's labs and we kind of made comments on things that didn't make sense or that needed to be changed or whatever. So we didn't create each of them in our own vacuum. We looked over each other's shoulder a little bit.
And while one of us would put like 15, 20 hours of researching into a single lab, the other ones had no research background and then went into the lab and tried to figure things out. So we feel like it's a pretty representative of new users coming through. So hopefully it will work out for students in the future.
Did any of you do one of the AWS certification exams after?
Yeah, I did.
How well do you think going through these labs prepares you for?
So that is a really good question. So I don't think there's any course out there, even Udemy, anywhere that will actually prepare you to take the test. The number one thing that helps you prepare to take the test is taking practice tests, just because of the way that they ask questions and things like that. So that will probably be one of the things we suggest and we've talked in the survey about is having that be the final, and then having the only required material outside of the class being some kind of those practice tests.
Yeah, so kind of the thought process here, and I want to get your input on this, is that I will require an AWS certification as part of that course. We'll have, really light course materials. So, the cost that you may spend on books would be spent on taking that certification, and then that'll be a component of the final exam grade, essentially. It is something that, as I've talked to many folks, as I've studied myself for those certifications, how do we teach enough? Because the certifications are concepts. You have to have some familiarity, but not a ton. But at the end of the day, you really want to walk away not just with a certification, but being able to implement projects in the AWS infrastructure. And so I think, the labs will go a long way in that second objective, but the credential, I think, is necessary if you're going to go out and do something in the space.
Keep it at the concept level so they don't have to keep rewriting it every few months.
Yeah, so that the plan also is to do a lecture a week, conceptual, that's aligned with the certification, and then a corresponding lab. Not all these labs are covered in either the basic intro certs, and so, but there's a fair amount, and kind of getting the ecosystem, filling it out. There'll also be kind of a project at the end of the semester that they'll do after they've done the labs to kind of make something significant out of what they know about the different components, and hopefully used as a launch point to get into their capstones the following semester. We do have 29 students enrolled in the class this fall, so definitely is going to be used, which is awesome. What students should we not allow in such a class?
Students without coding experience.
So if I have someone that comes and says, I really want to get into the cloud, maybe they're from some other department.
I think they could do it. I think that they would struggle, but if they're willing to take on that struggle, if they have a friend in the class or someone that they could work with, I think they'd be a lot better off. But yeah, it would be difficult without that experience, and I think we use as a baseline like 531. So if they don't have any experience in cloud, I think they could do it, but there'd be a learning curve initially.
Yeah.
Is 531 a prerequisite?
That's a great question. Right now, no, because it's a 593R. The assumption, though, is that they'll have equivalent knowledge in at least the cloud portion. I think we're all students in our major. We're not advertising this externally this year. All right, looks like we're over time. Great job, gentlemen. It'll be super useful. Thank you so much.
It's gonna be a great class.
So
there's a few things I'm like, I want to do that lab.
Yeah.
Let's shoot me the labs.
Yeah, of course. And
Especially
or
the lab ones.
you're also welcome to come join and enjoy.
Yeah, that might be fun.
Put a lot of. All right, thank you.
It's exciting. It's really fun.
All right, let's see. Next up, we have Need for Feed. Come on down. That's right. We are hungry to figure it out. Here are the good things.
Okay. Stick around. I need one more time.
Number of employees.
No, I have an HDMI converter. I'm excited to see you guys.
I think it would be something. Hi. Mark up.
Good to see you. How are you? Pretty good.
Nice to see you. Good to see you.
You guys still look awake?
We are so excited for you.
It's been a long day, hasn't it?
Not as long as yesterday. This is and frankly, it's kind of fun to come to these presentations, especially where I have the back or the inside knowledge of kind of the progress over time and stuff. So that's fun. So gentlemen, you can get set up, and if you're ready to go and rock and roll, are you?
Sounds good. Yeah, we're just waiting for.
Oh, waiting on our technologist.
Oh, good. Tyler, come to the rescue. No rush either.
And you're gonna deck of cards, huh?
Yeah, someone, one of the groups kind of mocked out a game when they showed the scoring of it, the board game pal.
That's fun.
Folks, it was good.
Wait, whose was that again?
That was Braden's and Stevens, is it?
Yeah, that one and the like the Jackbox games for board games one.
Yeah.
With Michael. Super cool.
Yeah.
Just in time delivery.
Brought a new meaning to the word sprint today.
I got a bunch of other classes that are showing interest, but I want to look at Upper first.
Oh yeah, you should put it. My favorite friends.
Okay, you ready?
Sure. Yeah, I just pull up my slides. Or should your slide box?
As soon as that travel authorization and international docs contacted me, said they go withdrawals just like the online form.
Okay, but just for South Africa,
Yeah.
Are you doing that other thing?
No.
It's bad state.
Personal travel.
I think he's going there.
Oh, perfect.
But he's turning it into his own FDIB, so he's going to
Yeah, so
Yeah, Postico.
Zambia, Namibia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe.
That's awesome.
Well,
Right there is the quad point. You have to get to all
yeah,
four.
we can get all four in single one.
That's right.
Positively that's fair.
So is that this summer?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
June.
Is anyone else in the department going? Mark?
Mark is not. Tony is.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Okay, perfect. The floor is yours.
All right, we are Need for Feed. I'm Devin, Tyler, and Spencer here. For the question, we want to start with a question. How many of you, or have any of you ever wondered what is the closest food truck that you can go visit, or how can you find
I
it?
have wondered that.
One customer, right there.
So that's kind of what started this all out, was actually just wondering, why is there no good app? After I did a lot of research, I realized there's a ton of apps. There's no one good app that you can use to find food trucks. And so we were trying to figure out why is this not the case? Why is it so hard to create an app? So as I did some research and started interacting with food truck owners and with people in the space, and people had started to build apps. In fact, there was a BYU student that tried to build out a project to do just this. I started to realize what the problem was. And that is that it's not as simple as food trucks to end consumers. What we'll see in the process here is that there's a couple of things that food truck owners have to do that it turns out they don't like to do. And so one of the main things is getting spots or locations. And so food truck owners have to figure out how to capitalize on different spots, and it's quite political, and there's a lot of things going on in the community that you have to network and be effective in that way. The other thing they have to do is they have to use calendaring. They have to develop good calendars, and it turns out, for whatever reason, food truck owners in particular just hate calendaring. as I've realized interacting with them, because their core competency is just cooking food. They just want to make food. And so calendaring is something they don't want to do. And so as I was exploring this, I realized that there's a market segment that nobody knows exists, and it's called scheduling. It's called food truck scheduling. There's actually 4 companies in Salt Lake City that do this. They just do food truck scheduling. I mean, they do other things because it doesn't supply enough revenue. But there are companies that are actually food truck schedulers. And what they do is they coordinate, between, keep going here. They coordinate basically between the food trucks and the venue representatives, the site representatives. That's what our secretary represents. So somebody calls up and says, hey, scheduler, I want a food truck every Tuesday. I want this variety. I want whatever, I have this many people that I think can come. Then the scheduler, has their database and says, oh, okay, I can get you some trucks every Tuesday or whatever. The problem is the food truck schedulers are using basically these tools to do the job. So, they're using Google Calendar, Gmail. They have big, Gmail groups they'll send out, and then they have different groups of like preferred trucks versus lush truck, and then they're trying to handle event. Let's say that I can only have 15 trucks. I invite 20. How do I then, cap it off if I get 15 trucks and then I don't want any more? So they're dealing with all sorts of problems with the email. They're even texting, and they're in spreadsheets. So they're just having a really hard time organizing and managing the schedules that they need to, and so that's where we come in as Need for Feed. We decided that they needed a tool. They needed a web application that could help them do the scheduling. And so you can see here, the food trucks need somebody to schedule them, but they don't want to touch technology. And then the schedulers, they need trucks, but they need better technology. And so we're coming in and saying, all right, we're going to do 2 things. Number 1, we're going to create a web application that will allow these food truck schedulers to have some kind of calendar, and then extend invitations that have, or create events basically, like you would on a Google Calendar. But we needed more than just Google Calendar functionality. We needed to be able to say, okay, where is it at, and who is it going to be invited? So we wanted to add this functionality to something like Google Calendar. And then we wanted to give the trucks a way to stay hands off, because food truck owners, as I said, they're very technology averse. It's very hard to persuade them to use any application on any device. But we're thinking, oh, let's get them to just text. What if I can just text you and say, hey, we have this event, do you want to come, yes or no? And then we can update the calendar that way. So we thought that would be a pretty cool idea. So now we're going to demo our application here. What Need for Feed is built, or is in the process of building.
All right, good stuff. So without further ado, present to you Need for Feed. Okay, and so just to give you a little bit of context behind what this is built on and what stack we decided to use, we decided we wanted to use a framework that we never used before because we thought it'd be fun to learn something new on the back end, and so we found a Node framework called Loopback, which is kind of like the monolithic web framework in the Node world, kind of like the Rails for the Ruby world and the Django for the Python world. And so it handles a lot of the ORM type issues, and it comes with a web framework built in, so you can do all the routing, and it has actually a really cool functionality that allows you to spin up like vanilla REST APIs, so based on your models, and then there's a lot of robust features that come along with that as far as filtering and including and doing nested searches. It kind of feels a little bit like GraphQL for those of you who've used that. It lets you query exactly what you need, and so worked out great. And then we use React on the front end, and so yeah, this is our application. And really quick, I'm just going to go ahead and log out and show you what the flow looks like. So we come here, we have a login screen, which currently is where schedulers can log in. We haven't implemented the food truck functionality just past them being able to accept invitations at the time being. So a scheduler can come in, and we just have a set of admin credentials, and they can log in. It'll authenticate and pass back a token from Loopback and let us in. And then here is the main landing page. They can come in and see their events that they've planned, and interacting with those events provides the name of the event, the description, the location that it's going to be at, So in this case, Strom and Mitchell. And if it's recurring, the start and end date. And so basically just a simple calendar interface to start off with. And then as well as on top of that, there's a truck interface where they can come over and specify how many trucks they want at this event at this given time. And so let's say in this case we want 2. And then the pending invitations, which we'll get to demoing here in a second. And then they can send more invitations by coming in here. And we're actually going to demo this for you via Spencer's Google Voice account. So you can see the text and see the interactions as we go through this. So before I send this off, I'm just going to go ahead and do incognito. Two-factor authentication. Okay, cool. So this specific truck that I've selected, and by the way, this is like multiple select. You can select, send invitations to multiple trucks at once. But this truck that we've selected actually has Spencer's phone number behind the scenes. So we're going to go ahead and send this. And one cool functionality we implemented is the number of trucks needed. What that'll do is it will check when someone gets so after an invitation is sent, someone responds to that invitation, whether there's enough trucks, and if there are, then it'll change the status of these invitations to expired, and then it'll respond with the text saying, hey, sorry, there's no more room, keep in touch for future references. But
so you proactively push as soon as you hit your queue?
Right.
Well, no, so like if the food truck attempts to respond after the spots are filled.
Oh, okay, so you don't push out another message.
There's no
yeah, that's going to be a little tricky on how many do you send, and I assume you'll have some good metrics later on that, if we need 2, we send 4 or 5, and so you don't over-invite, because that'll turn off food truck owners pretty quickly too.
Yeah, it's true. If they get a lot of expired invitations, that would be good. Cool, so we're gonna go ahead and send this off. The demo gods are smiling upon us today. And boom. Okay. Yeah. So Spencer got a text. It's still a trial Twilio account right now. So it has just like something like trial Twilio account. But it says you've been invited to a restaurant at this address at this date. Respond yes if you're coming and no if you're not. So let's go ahead and just say that Spencer is coming. And so we have a WebSocket in place that'll give us like real-time updates as they respond. So let's go ahead and send this off real quick and watch this bell up here.
So is this interface just opposite there?
Which interface?
Oh, so the message that I was reading was the very top one, but.
Oh yeah, it's in reverse order. It threw me off.
Yeah,
so
okay.
So it's in reverse order.
Sounds good.
And so then it responds saying, "We're excited to have you." Wait, is that right?
That was weird. Yeah.
Or is that's the problem?
I don't know what happened there.
I think I might have sent the right place.
You got the notification back.
Okay, so that's accepted. But okay. So it looks like this respond text. Really quick, let's just try that. Okay. So when they respond yes. Oh wait, now it's. Oh, okay. So it isn't. It's not in reverse order.
I think the texts are just being slow and coming in.
Okay, so this one came in just now.
I've got it on my phone.
Okay, so we're excited to have you. Yeah, so it did say, sorry, I'm not familiar with Google Voice. So it did send back the response, we're excited to have you, and then notified us over here that that this company, this food truck company, has accepted our invitation to this this event. And then we currently don't have a WebSocket in place to update the actual event, but if we refresh that real quick, we come over here, now we'll see that there's an accepted truck invitation. And so one more to go before we have enough trucks for this event. And yeah, so that's kind of the event flow. And I'll go ahead and turn time over to Spencer to demo some of the rest of the app.
Oh yeah. So next we just have a map flow. This again is just kind of a useful heads up display so food truck owners can see
where their events are, which, okay, let's just see why that's not working. Basically, it'll just give you markers. Yeah, there we go. So you can just see all over the region where your events are that are upcoming, and make sure that you've got food trucks assigned to them. Yeah, we just felt that this would be a useful feature just so they know, where they need to disperse their trucks and what kind of, like, the number of events that they have in a specific day. These two views are CRUD views for the schedulers to use. So trucks is where they can come in and add new trucks. They can put in phone numbers for trucks so they can reach out to these companies and invite them to service these events. Also, so eventually we'll have a page where trucks can come in and request to be, I guess, opt into the program, and the schedulers can accept those truck requests. So yeah, again, just basic delete and edit functionality here, and then venues is the same thing. So we can see here on our Loischka. Oh, sorry, let's see where are we at.
Is there a way to sort that alphabetically or anything?
You can sort it. You can search at the top. There's a search bar.
Okay, let's see. It's Richie. That's the one I wrote before. So anyways, these, like, you can change the events here. Let's see, we'll edit this. I think this one's the one with my home address. No, it's not. At any rate, we can go. Let's just set that in, so that way when we create an event with this a little bit later, we can see it show up on our map. Cool. So yeah, so basically we just wanted to make it as simple as possible to schedulers. Again, like Devin said, like the trucks are definitely technology adverse, but the schedulers, I mean, they've been using Gmail and Excel for a long time, so we want to make this transition as easy as possible for them. Other than that, I think that about covers it on the front. Is there anything else that we want to go over to? Great.
Show them creative that.
Okay, yeah.
Just like the little cool.
Yeah, okay, so actually we need to create it faster today. Okay, so let's create an event here. So we can call it send out invitations to Loischka Cup-Off.
That's my fun.
Okay, good. And some Redux problems, it looks like. Okay, well, yeah, that worked 15 minutes ago, so.
We've all been.
0 trucks, is that?
Oh, yeah. Good.
While we train the
Yeah.
schedulers for us.
Yeah, probably put some more user validation on this board.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in the food truck space.
Good.
You need a location too.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just not cooperating.
You refresh it, what? Shouldn't need to refresh.
Okay. Well, event creation's struggling right now. I apologize for that.
Sorry, should have suggested it.
Yeah. Anyway, so you can create an event. I guess you'll just have to take it on good faith on that one. And yeah, so you can just manage the events from there and kind of have some good visibility with your trucks that you have. So.
Thank you. That's what we got for you today.
All right.
You
So,
have some
question.
lessons learned?
Oh.
I was actually going to talk to that, but then I figured there'd be a question, so I guess I should just talk to it.
Okay.
So I'll speak for myself and maybe if you guys want to pipe in. So the main thing that I learned, I could not believe how much of GovAllen 402 was it database. I could not believe how many times Tyler and I sat down, either after interacting. So I interacted with the main scheduling company in Salt Lake that we're trying to build this for, and with an IT guy that's kind of in the space as well. I couldn't believe how many times I had to come back to Tyler and say, actually, we need to change the models. And so I just could not believe how much time was sunk, how much of the development time that I wanted was sunk just into redoing the models and then reseeding the data was just insane how many times we changed, because we're trying to build it really long term as well and scalable, so we just had to constantly rethink how the models were attached. That's the main lesson I learned, is there's a lot of thought and time that's going to be dropped into building good models.
I mean, I guess, yeah, like as far as the front end goes, like the amount of like rewrites that had to be done was tremendous, right? Which like, I think like all three of us have worked on web applications in like, I guess just with our jobs, and that like you see that there too, and it's just interesting. Like when I'm the developer, I sit there and complain about like the rewrites and like, oh, like why are we having to do this again? And then it's like, even on this project that we are owning and doing, it's like there's just, as this new data becomes available and more information becomes available, like there just really sometimes there's not a whole lot you can do. You kind of code yourself into a corner when you don't have full visibility of what's going on. And so, I mean, first of all, I guess you can avoid that by like doing a lot of legwork up front, which Devin was like super good on. But even so, like with the small changes that we had, like there was a lot of refactoring that goes in, and that, I mean, it takes hours. Like if you got to change one function, right? Like trying to fish that out through a lot of different places is fun and kind of exasperating at times. So.
So what would minimize that?
So modularity, and I think we did a pretty good job of that up front. So just keeping your functions separate and performing one specific function instead of trying to do all these batch processing in one like method. So that helped a lot. And when we did do this refactor, we were able to import a lot of the old code in that regard. Other than that, I think really, yeah, just sitting down and knocking your head against the models is like probably the best way to avoid that, and getting a good contract up front with your back end of what you're expecting to see.
Great.
Yeah, for me, I'd say from a technical perspective, it was a lot of fun to dive into some of these newer technologies that I never used before. Like React, I hadn't really done much with React, or never used Loopback, never really used WebSockets, or gotten to dive into like Twilio or things like that. So it was just a fun opportunity to dive into some new technologies and learn those. And then from a business perspective, and as far as like our workflow went, I feel like it was easy to like kind of fall into scope creep a lot of the time, or just kind of get siloed in and hyper focused and on this like specific feature that I thought would be really cool and that maybe wasn't necessarily part of our roadmap, but I kind of started working on, and I thought it wouldn't take that long, and then that turned into like hours. And so just kind of, I think, constantly checking, and Devin was really good about this. Whenever I talked to him, he'd be like, all right, we should scrap that and like come back on track. And so I think just like being able to, and Becky knows that, we were in a junior core group together. I think that's always been something of mine. But yeah, I think just being able to like monitor myself and then make sure that what I'm going down isn't a rabbit hole, and then that we're staying on track with scope and really trying to get an MVP product of it ready and available, as opposed to bells and whistles that might not be part of core functionality.
Other thoughts or questions?
Let me just make sure I get my head around it. So if this were being launched in 2 different cities right now, there would be a login for the schedulers, as you're calling them. And let's just say even 2 states, so they're really far apart, not just Provo, Salt Lake, but maybe like California, Denver, Salt Lake, relatively far. So a scheduler is coming in and they're setting up events, and then through this they have their separate logins, and then they are sending out invitations. That's kind of the gist of what's happening there.
Right, and then they have their list of trucks they have relationships with, and in the long term, we see this turning into a platform that supports both trucks and schedulers. They'll both be able to log in, they'll both be able to manage their profiles and leave reviews for each other, form relationships and communicate over the platform, as well as manage those invitations and those schedules from both perspectives. Right now, we decided to focus on the scheduler side because that's where we saw the biggest need and the biggest willingness from the business perspective for them to adopt our product. But yeah, in the long term, that is the vision, is to have a collaborative platform that supports both.
Okay, so just commenting, like once I saw on TV, about people like chase around trucks around town in LA, wherever the K-pop or whatever truck is going to, and I thought, that's so weird, I totally want to do that. So I buy into what you're doing in terms of, I would love to chase around trucks and know where they're at and just have really unique eats. I forgot what I was going to ask now. Oh, but you also said
second client.
Yes. All right, so you said earlier that maybe, I thought you said that there's not a lot of money, it's not like a full-time job for schedulers,
Is that what I heard you say? And so, what's the market for this, and can you run with it, going forward?
Yeah, that's a good question.
So I want to use the service, but is the scheduler going to pay for it?
Yeah, so I'm in conversation with the Food Truck Association in Salt Lake, and they're trying to muster some funds to continue it going, but it's certainly not. It's not, lucrative. You're not going to be feeding a family on it. And so, yeah, I think that's a very good question, though.
I can maybe speak a little bit to on the monetization. So, like Devin's original vision was to have like a mobile app, so have it be actually like us end user facing, right? But like as more investigation was done, it was found out like scheduling is the first problem, right? Like the food trucks don't even know where they're going to be, and so how can we get an app out to clients, or sorry, to end users, customers, so they can chase around food trucks if the food trucks aren't sure about where they're going to be, and there's no central source of truth on that. So the first bird to kill was fixing the scheduling problem. And so maybe there's not a whole lot of money in the scheduling, but at the end of the day, it's like once you get the scheduling down and you've got it centralized and we own the information, that's where you can make your money, right? So like, can a food truck pay to promote like where they're at a specific time, right? Because once we've got that information, we can now push out an app to users, so on your iPhone, on your Android device, where you can now go chasing around food trucks, and so there can be a little bit like pay to play there with the food trucks themselves.
Yeah, Deegan, I want to speak to this, or I want to speak to this real fast because it's very interesting that the biggest problem with creating an end user application is that you don't know where the trucks are. You have to persuade the trucks to use an application that users are using, and you have to persuade users to use an application that trucks are using if you're doing what we originally set out to do. And so we're trying to take the long way around to get there by building a scheduling application that eventually we build a mobile application for trucks to interface with this. As soon as they're on an app, then we have their location. As soon as we have their location, then I come to Jeff and I say, Jeff, I have all the locations of the food trucks by my app. And so there's potential there.
I learned about a potential competitor this morning. I was asking a friend, like, do you know where this certain taco truck would be? Because we wanted to go get tacos from a truck. And he sent me a link from the Daily Herald that had locations of food trucks around Provo. And I thought that was pretty cool. I'll shoot it to you. But I wonder if there's a way to, it looks like their schedules are pretty static. And I wonder if there's a way to potentially scrape or incorporate some of that information, or how you would differentiate something like that. Just food for thought, right? I want to shoot that to you.
Thank you.
Couple quick ideas on small features. I think creating colors for your different events based on current status of how many are filled or not filled, or maybe icons could be super helpful. So that a scheduler comes in and like, I've got to follow up on this one, send out some additional things, especially if they're really managing for different companies at different times, kind of what is the status overall for all my upcoming events, say this week. Another thing, the filtering on your map view would be super helpful. It could be time-based is what I was thinking. Yeah, or status-based or other things, so you can kind of say, oh, okay, really, I don't care, I just want to go to my next place, tomorrow. I just want to make sure I kind of have a lay of the land of where I'm headed or something like that. So kind of all the events aren't as helpful, but maybe, this week's or something else, as well, and then changing the icons so that they're kind of ordered so you kind of see your routes potentially.
I wanted to ask a couple questions.
Please, read.
So, is it rare to have more than one of the same company's food trucks at an event? In other words, you're saying that you needed 2 food trucks, right?
Two different
ones in this model. But what I'm saying is, does this particular company have the option to say, to support that event, we want to send 2 of our own?
Oh, that'd be cool. So like having 2 cup ops at an event, or like, right? Okay.
Because they believe that there'll be enough of an audience there, or whatever, based on the particular event that you're doing. And then the other question I had is the analytics. I mean, are you tracking so that you could promote, in a sense, certain venues or certain locations for trucks to go? I don't know. If you have a static you know, every day this food truck shows up at this place because this particular business wants it. But if you're talking about events and event management, you know, these are the premier locations, this is who drove, you know, got the most audience, or, you know, the most opportunity, those sorts of things. I mean, you could use it from that viewpoint of saying, you know, you get a primo option.
Yeah, I think those are both great options for sure. And we didn't get to that part in our user research on the first question as far as whether they could have 2 trucks. But I think that's a great question we can take back to Maxwell and some of our contacts and see if that is a need, and if it isn't, I think that'd be really cool to implement. And then as far as the getting leads and getting more data around that, I like that as well. And machine learning is, you know, definitely on the horizon, as well as getting analytics and trying to make recommendations along those lines. And another way, we were actually hoping to have it in by this presentation, but another form of leads we wanted to generate was to give companies the opportunity to come in and request trucks. So like 3M or BYU, whoever it is, could come on and say, hey, I want like 4 trucks on this date, here's my address. And then schedulers could come in and see those, and whether those relationships are formed beforehand, or it's kind of just first come, first serve, we haven't fully figured out yet. But yeah, giving companies the opportunity to come in and have one interface to come in and request to have trucks at their location.
All right, thanks so much. Okay, and that's a wrap.